Kevin Golden, a member of the James Moore manufacturing team. I'm here today with Mike Sibley, one of my partners and the leader of the James Moore manufacturing team. On today's episode, we're going to discuss preparing your manufacturing company for growth. It's a proactive approach to what can be done now to prepare for growth rather than simply reacting to it. Mike, why don't you tell us a little bit about, first of all, I think to understand what we're talking about here about being proactive and growing our company and so forth, we're really talking about scaling. So why don't you start us off by just, first of all, defining that? Because I'm sure there's different types of scalability, different thoughts and what people think that is. Why don't you first define for us, what is scalability in terms of manufacturing?
Yeah, I think, this is a great topic, one that, as we've been talking with our clients and they're growing and trying to grow, there's always the struggle of, what comes first, the chicken or the egg, the processes, the way to do it, the revenue, the costs that go along. How do you plan for that? And I think one of the things when you step back is as companies go from, you go startup, then you got 5 million, 10, 15, 20, every $5 million, it seems, and that's not a scientific number, that just seems to be a number that I have observed over time, you see a need for substantial change and in terms of structures, processes, ability to grow, even with financial resources such as working capital and lines of credit and things of that nature. And that need changes, and it feels like it gets faster and faster and faster the more you grow. And I've seen companies that are 10, 15, 20 million, 25 million that still have operational processes that are similar to what they were when they were 5 million. They haven't grown and changed, or the people have not been trained to be able to do more. And so what that ends up doing is puts a serious strain on growth. And what are the impacts of that? You might see lead times growing substantially, quality issues, customer service issues, financial statement issues that are not catching up because the processes to get information into the accounting department is not good. So you see a potential lot of issues that potentially can come across, and it's because we're not thinking ahead in terms of planning for what we have now to be scalable. So when we talk about scalability, that's really the ability of the systems or processes to handle more growth. Now, you may not, if you're a $5 million company and you're scalable to 10, that's great now. But as you approach 10, you might need to relook at things. So manufacturers are really good about continuous improvement, or many of them are continuous. But a lot of times that's focused on maybe the product development, or even just the manufacturing processes. But really, scalability can go beyond that. That's where when we start talking about different types, operational scalability, for example, is the processes and the systems that manage your increased production. So you've got your operational scalability, technical scalability, your technological, your software, your hardware, your networks. Do you have an ERP system that or not? Are you using a very basic set of accounting system? Heck, I've seen companies use Excel and then get into like a QuickBooks and then grow and beyond. But where is that? Can your system manage your inventory? Can your system manage your workflow? So there's a technical side of things. The strategic scalability can, the planning and the business strategies that you have in place. Is it scalable as you go up your market? How are you marketing? How are you doing your business development? How are you bringing in your sales? Is it technical sales, meaning they're very involved in the technical development of the plans that you need to manufacture? Then, of course, there's financial scalability. And Kevin, you and I have talked about this a lot. Looking at budgets and forecasting more than just a year, but maybe 2 or 3 years out, and then saying, okay, what does this mean for our working capital? Do we have the working capital as we grow to be able to handle this? So if you're looking at 15, 20, 25% growth, that can put serious strains on your working capital and on your your scalability within your line of credit or other resources, to the point now if you start falling behind on vendor payments and things like that, that can really, really stretch you. So one of the things I think that is really, really important for a business is to step back and think about are we scalable for the next level of growth that we're thinking about in terms of those four areas? And there could be other areas you might have product and design scalabilities, research and development. You can have many other areas, but this is sort of a broad, set of four things that I think are really important to think about in terms of, are we ready?
Right. And I like too about you talk about, okay, well, what got me from 5 to 10 and 10 to 15 and so forth? You're continuously looking at this, right? This is not a one and done. Okay, this is, and like you said, generally not even that broad of a range. It's what got me here to this point today isn't what's going to get me there tomorrow, right? So always looking, always tweaking. It's a lot of working on your business, not just in it on making your product, which again we tend to because that's probably what you've started out doing, right? To build to where you are today. So yeah, I like the idea of continuously looking at these items and looking at the scalability because it always needs tweaking, right? Competition's always right around the corner. A new challenge, a new growth item is just one day away. So constantly looking at those things and seeing how can we continue to improve and continue to scale. So you mentioned a lot of different types: operational, strategic, technical, and financial there. So we know kind of what those are. Now the questions really is, well, how do we plan for it? I mean, there's a lot of ground to cover there, right? Where should a company really, when it comes to thinking about this and tweaking this, where should they begin?
Yeah, it's a great question, and I think it always comes back to, I think, strategic planning and vision. Where do you want to go? Where do you see yourself going? Step back and say, what are we planning for growth? Where are the potential growth areas? So working and strategic planning doesn't need to be a super overly complex thing that generates a 150-page book that you put in your desk somewhere or hang on the wall because you put a pretty cover on it. It can really be pretty basic, but identifying in the strategy session, or where is the growth coming from? What are you budgeting for growth, or what are you anticipating from growth in terms of sales? What markets are hitting? What product development? And then part of the strategic planning session, in my mind, comes back to, where are the areas of risk within your organization? Where are the areas that you struggle with? What are those threats? What are those things that we need to address? And I think that's something that is often, probably missed, is the risk assessment part of a business. Meaning, what part of our businesses have risk? Is it a people risk? Maybe we don't have the right people in the right spots for growth. Maybe we need a plant manager and we don't really have one. If the CEO is wearing all the hats, which is often what we see, there's a risk right there. And how do we get some of those responsibilities off? And so it's looking at it and stepping aside and saying, okay, what's our strategic plan? Where are we trying to go? And then put those things in place to assess. So that's kind of your top level. Then you start looking at, our resources. So within that strategic plan, where are our resources going? Human resources, the people that we just talked about, financial, technological. If we don't have going back to financial, if we don't have a good relationship with our bank, we don't have a line of credit, we don't have a good meet with them, build those relationships, make sure you're building that. Learn how to build an appropriate budget and a cash flow budget and a working capital budget, and understand what this growth is going to mean for you. See where you are people wise. Where are the people? Look at your technology. Is the technology going to get you there? Does it have the capabilities? One of the things that I think manufacturers do really well is look at their processes and optimize them. And I think they do that really well in the manufacturing side of things. Often that doesn't carry over to other sides, to the other side of the business. Maybe it's a sales process, and you and I have had plenty of conversations about sales process, and really great ones that we can talk about. Accounting processes, HR process, but look at those. Getting somebody onboarded, right, in a timely fashion, getting the sales through the process so you can actually get it into production quickly. So looking at your process, and of course manufacturing, should always be looking to continuously improve the manufacturing operations, and it's a scalable. In other words, understand your capacity levels. So if you're at 100% capacity right now and you're predicting 20% growth, how are you going to get that through in a reasonable time without your your scrap rates going up because of quality issues, or lead times growing substantially. So look at those things, and my whole point in this is prepare, be ahead of the curve. And that's one of the hardest things I think for business to do, because you are busy, but make some time to get ahead of the curve on those things. Because what happens is, if you're experiencing those problems, now you're behind the curve and you're trying to make up for it. And that can be detrimental, especially if a customer says, you know what, I can go somewhere else and get this. Or, hey, while you work out these issues, I'm going to try some other suppliers in this particular case. That can be very problematic, obviously, for growth. Innovation. And one of the things, is another area. And one of the things I'm a big proponent of is get your people to help. So even if you have a small staff, they're the ones doing the process every single day. They can probably tell you where bottlenecks are, how to innovate, how to bring things into, through the process, get that throughput faster, what bottlenecks are out there. And of course, when you start talking about technology and innovation, think about equipment, AI on the software side of things, but also automation with equipment. And automation is becoming a huge part of the manufacturing industry because labor is so tough to identify. So looking at what is out there and what's available, oftentimes before I hear from manufacturers, before they even go out to see, they just write it off as it's going to be too expensive. Well, it might be, but that's where we look at, what's your growth rate going to be? What's the ROI time frame on this? Hey, there's tax benefits to getting pieces of equipment, right? That can help, mitigate some of the cash flow needs. There's financing, because we're going to go talk to our bank about financing this over a period of time. But it's looking into all of these various aspects. So, again, I just listed off a bunch of different things. Fortunately, anybody can go back and rewind and listen over and things like that. It starts with the strategy, starts with understanding where you're going, and putting one piece in at a time. Don't try to eat the whole elephant. Take one bite at a time, really be strategic with where we put those time, but think about those processes that we're going to need to get ahead of the curve.
Well, and two, it's one thing you mentioned there, a couple of things you mentioned. One, in these areas, it's almost like stress testing what you currently have, right? Like you said, hey, if I'm at this capacity, X capacity, and I've got Y growth, hey, how am I going to get over that, right? What am I going to be doing about that today that's going to set me up for when that does come? I'm prepared, right? So it's a little bit of stress testing your systems now before they're really stressed in the heat of the moment, right? Also, I think we can't stress enough the whole picture, right? We say this a lot in accounting in our profession that, hey, a tax answer is one answer, or an accounting answer is one answer. You got to look at the economic answer. You got to look at the big picture, look at everything for that, whether it's on, cost of people, cost of equipment, or whether it's on, well, currently the way we do things, yeah, that may not be scalable, but it doesn't mean that maybe we're not using our resources the right way in the most beneficial manner to where that could be scalable. So I think it's kind of a don't throw the baby out with the bathwater, of meaning you've got to look at the whole picture and what we're doing, because one little tweak here or there has a ripple effect across your company. But understanding those levers, understanding, well, whenever I tweak and I hire X amount of more people, or I purchase Y amount of more resources or inventory, what does that do to the whole system? Understanding that will help you make sure you're pulling the right levers at the right time to be most beneficial and most efficient you can be. So I think, just again, looking at that big picture and understanding all those different facets will help you to make a better decision that isn't just the best in the moment, but it's best overall for that, like you said, that vision, that strategy that you have for 5, 10, 15 years from now. So, but yeah, I think you hit, a lot of what you hit on there did talk about, kind of a traditional manufacturing process procedure. And you hit on a little bit of the other things that I know we've talked about in some other calls or some other sessions about HR, finance, sales, IT, and so forth, and just making sure they're integrated, across as a whole. Anything else you want to add on to that as far as just kind of making sure, I guess the question I'm asking is, how do you get across the board, making sure that all those different departments and everything are kind of looking at this the same way you are, maybe as a business owner, as far as the scalability? You mentioned a little bit there of getting their feedback on how things work, or how a process is going or how it's inefficient so they can make it better. But how do you then tie in other maybe non-traditional departments like the sales, like the HR and so forth into that same sort of strategic
Mhm.
vision and scalability mindset?
Yeah, that's a great question, and I think I've seen some really good ways that manufacturers have tackled this, and I think the most basic way is to build a leadership team, and get your person in charge of sales and finance and HR and IT and manufacturing in a room, talk about the strategy together, get their input on the strategy, and also get their input, be transparent with them, and get their input on growth, get their input on the process. Because remember, I mean, you think about it, uh, a product is a value stream, and manufacturers are used to hearing the term value stream, right? So it's going to go, it's going to start at the sales level, or what customer comes in, and it's going to work its way all the way through the manufacturing process on a continuum, all the way through billing and then collections, and then the finance team doing the financial reports, right? HR is involved because they're doing the human resources. IT is involved across the spectrum because they're, so get them involved, get their input in this, and make them part of the team that is helping uh, build the improvements to the optimization to these processes. Get their buy-in. And I think one of the things that ends up happening in change management and dealing with change is it's easy for, early on to say, I'm the CEO, I'm saying you must do this now. And people are like, this is crazy. This isn't helping. This is making it harder. I don't know what he's talking about. There's no buy-in. And I think, we've taken the approach of, and when we're working with companies in lean management and trying to improve processes, is it's a team oriented solution. Let's figure out the best way to do this as a team, because there's probably some really smart people on your team and they got some really good ideas. And so I think that's how you really integrate is build that leadership team. Then that leadership team, and again, you can do it in a very small company. And maybe you don't have, maybe the CEO is the head of sales. Okay. Well, maybe you don't have a head of IT or something, but you do have some key personnel. Get them involved. And then as you grow, you're going to build in a true leadership team. And that growth can be prepared because these people are going to be trained. They're going to know, you're going to build them up. And by building them up, that actually takes some pressure off me as a CEO, if I'm the CEO or the owner, to build them up into, and they're going to know what to expect, and they're going to know how to help build the company up. Now, they may get to a point at some point where they're tapped out in terms of their capabilities. Fine. But that point you might have to hire some higher level people in, whatever that might be. But truly to get integrated is talk to your team, build it out, use a team oriented component. Don't take on too much more, but look at where the issues are. If the issues are getting sales in a way that the production team can take it and run, start there. If you're having issues if you're having issues in your manufacturing facility, maybe, like I said, you're at 110% capacity. Maybe you need to start there. It's taken us a risk assessment, working with a team to say, where are we going to start?
Yeah, no, that's great. Now, so we've gotten buy-in. We kind of know what direction we're heading. We've got those key personnel, those key members, leadership members, and so forth on the same page now. Now comes the hard part. We've done all the thinking, but now we got to implement, right? So that's probably just as equally as tough and sometimes even tougher on taking your great ideas from pen to paper, right? And now implementing those. So how do we go about okay, we've got all that great idea, we've got all that brainstorming, all that great leadership thinking towards now, let's implementing some of these ideas and so forth. What can we do to kind of help out with that implementation plan? Because it's not, uh, like I said, that's probably as equally as tough, if not tougher, than coming up with a great idea in the first place. So,
Yeah, I think like I said, the first piece is we've developed the strategy, we've developed the vision, we've got the leadership team, and we've got where we want to start working on things. I think from here, as part of that, you're looking at what sort of innovations do we need, what kind of technologies, if any, that we need, and where are we going to get started. And so some of this, I would say, is you hit some low hanging fruit, but don't try to take on so much that you don't get anything done, because that's where failure often happens. but there's going to be some shorter term things and some longer term things. Like, for example, if we're talking about a piece of equipment that will automate a certain function, well, that may take some time to research, find the right piece of equipment, deal with the financing if we need to finance it, deal with the integration of it, the testing, all of those kind of things. So that can be a longer term piece. Then there's a shorter term. So I always say, what's our goal for the year? We've got our strategy. What's our goal for the year? Now let's break this down into weekly, monthly, quarterly. Let's bite off these things that we say we can do. Hold your people accountable, make it very clear this is what we want to do, and start building those things out. And knowing that some people might have some longer term objectives, like I said, the automation, using AI as an example, if it's out there, new technologies that are out there, depending on what we need. And so I think it's looking at that and then backing it down into, here's the pieces we need to do each week, month, quarter, that builds into our longer year. And again, it's the answer is always going to be, it depends on what you're trying to accomplish and when. But I think it's, don't overcomplicate it. Come up with your strategy, come up with what things you're going to focus on, and put your energies into that. Don't take up any more than you have to, because otherwise it won't get done. Everybody will be stressed out. Everybody will be trying to do everything except actually do the work you need to fulfill customer orders, right? So I think that's where we need to look at, and all the while you're looking at, where are your risks. What is creating your risk? Could be supply chain is creating your risk. Well, how are you going to deal with supply chain? Could be people management is your risk. Could be you could have equipment that's 20 years old and about to break down. I saw a manufacturer recently that we just barely started working with, and they didn't have a planned maintenance program. Their biggest piece of equipment broke down. They were down for a while without being able to make product. And so, there's a huge risk there if you don't have the proper things in place. So that's why I said this risk assessment is really part of it, but it's an ongoing process. So you never stop those kind of things. So, I think the key thing is, don't overcomplicate it. Find those things you're going to do, get them done, and move on to the next thing.
Right. Yeah, no, that's a great point. And I like the idea too of being realistic. Okay, hey, like you said, you got 100 different things that, okay, great. At some point in time, these need to be tackled, but that's not realistic for this quarter, this, year or whatnot. So being realistic with what can we actually do, what can we actually get done, and then, like you said, hold people accountable and get that done. So then you can move on to the next set of items. So no, that's great and all. And I think I know as we're wrapping up here, one of my takeaways, or one thing I think we have to remind business owners in general, and especially in manufacturing, is that, part of growth, scalability, and part of they don't call it growing pains or challenges for no reason. Part of it is success, being able to also accept that at times there's going to be failure. Right? No one likes speaking about that. No one only like talking about all the things we've done great. Hey, we, did this or that, or implemented this, or changed that, or created this. And now look at how, much we've grown. Now look at what we're able to provide to our customers and to the public. That's great and all, but I think also, really embracing your failures, right? That's going to happen. That's part of being an entrepreneur. That's part of being a business owner, but it's also, what can we take away from those, right? From those opportunities? I've heard we've said it before, if we're not failing in some ways, we're probably not trying quite hard enough, right? And we're not taking quite enough risks. So I agree, being aware of your risks and so forth in your company and all, but then also being willing to accept that, guess what? Not everything is going to, even with a proactive approach, going to go according to plan. That failures are going to happen, but what are we going to learn from those to help make us better in the long run and have a lot more success down the road as well? So, Mike, any other final thoughts as we wrap up, on scalability?
Yeah, I think one of the things I'll mention, and I'm going to paraphrase, because I'm probably going to screw up this quote, but Jack Welch said, if the rate of change on the outside exceeds the rate of change on the inside, you're dying. And I think that just goes to, a continuous improvement mindset. And, that starts with understanding understanding where you're going, and then what you think the steps are to get there. And when I say you, I mean you and a team, and it could be a team of one or two at the moment, and then that grows over time. But I do see what, as companies hit the 10 million mark and above, that's where those strains start really showing up. And so think ahead of that. And it only gets, if you're at 10 million and struggling and you're going to 15 million, it's only going to get worse if you don't get proactive. And I can tell you that the companies that I see that have really handled it well, build a team, even if it's a small team. They do the strategy. They look at their budgets and their finance. They build their banking team. They build their accounting team. They build those teams on the outside and on the inside. They look at the strategy, and then they look at these processes. They look at where the risk is, the operational scalability, the technical, the financial scalability, and so on. Look at those components and build a plan to really build the scalability within those, and then continuously improve. So in other words, once you do it, hey, we're good till 15 million. Don't wait till 15 million to start. Always be looking at how we improve that, because as you improve that, your rate of growth may actually go up way faster. You get that piece of equipment in, and I talked about financing. Debt isn't necessarily a bad thing for businesses. It can be a good thing because it can help you get that. It's how you manage it. It's how you manage the finance. Debt gets to be problematic when the financial side of things are not managed properly, and the economics that you mentioned are not managed properly. So going through the right thought process will keep your risk lower. So, it just starts with getting the basic strategy, getting your team built, and then building scalability in each of those things. And the companies that I've seen do it really well, that's what they do.
Right. Yeah, no, thanks. Well, Mike, we really appreciate the time today that you've provided on the inside of growing your manufacturing company, scaling it the right way, having the right mindset. We appreciate all of our guests and everybody for listening. Of course, if you've got any questions about anything we've discussed today, feel free to reach out to any of us or reach out to your financial advisor, your planner, your leadership team. And thanks again, and we'll see you guys next month.
To learn more about James Moore & Company's manufacturing services, go to jmco.com. And don't forget to subscribe to our More on Manufacturing series to receive updates when new videos and podcasts are released. If you'd like to be a guest, or if there's a topic you'd like to see covered on a future episode, contact us on our website. You can also follow us on social media for more news as the landscape on manufacturing continues to rapidly evolve.